Hi and welcome back, and in this video we're going to be looking at 3 things that make up a good idea for a community interest company. So I'm going to give you 3 things you need for this to be a good workable idea that's going to be grant fundable and successful long term. So before I jump into that, please hit the subscribe button for everything to do with community interest companies, grant funding, social enterprises, being a community artist and all of that jazz. Also, if you're interested in starting a CIC company, go to my website and get the How to Set Up a CIC and Get Funded in 4 Months course. Hundreds of people have done it and I've mentored loads of people to successfully get grant funding. So that aside, let's jump into it. So I speak to people all day about their ideas for a CIC. People, because they see these videos, go to my website, jump in the chat and they say, so does this idea sound like it would work? So I've got used to advising people on what I think is a good idea that's workable, that will get grant funding and that will be sustainable long term. So I've broken this down into my 3 main tips for what makes up a good idea. So let's run through it. So number 1, you need a unique selling point, just the way every business does. Of course, you need to be offering something unique, something that addresses a problem in the community that isn't done by anybody else. So something that the doctors aren't doing, that the schools aren't doing, that social services can't do. Whatever the problem is in the community, you have something unique in your idea for your community interest company and for the activities you're going to be delivering in the community. They have to be unique. Also, you don't want any other CICs in the area doing the same thing, because grant funders will say, no, sorry, we're already funding people doing that in your community. So you want something that's a bit unique. So some good examples of unique CICs would be if you have sort of developed a way maybe with working with young people or whoever your group is that you're working with, but you've maybe mixed in some different skills and you're offering some different activities that no one else is, something that's very popular with your community. So really think outside the box, and that's the great thing about CICs is that they do think outside the box. They are an alternative. So I see a lot of CICs that have, like for instance, are doing alternative education. There's loads with the homeschool community that are setting up CICs, and of course they are an alternative to the education system. So what they're doing is unique. So number 2, there needs to be a demand and a need from your community to actually want to engage in the services and activities that you are going to put on as part of your CIC project. So you need to make sure that community want this. The best thing to do is actually ask your community, would you attend this? Is this something that you want to do? Run a taster session, see if they like it or not. But you need to have a need in your community. So you need to be able to prove to grant funders that your community wants to engage in whatever it is that you're doing. So CICs that don't do that tend to be ones that are just sort of like basically a person trying to create a job for themselves. And actually they're just wanting to do something to the community so they can get the money and they can just design their own job, and it's not really about the community. So anything like that, grant funders sniff that out and they'll reject it. So you really need something that's community focused, community led, and that is wanted and needed in your community. Number 3, you need to have the skill set to be able to deliver these projects. So you are probably somebody who may be from a professional background and you can carry over those skills, or maybe you've had a life experience that has given you skills, understanding. Because you've had that experience, you're able to advise and help other people. So I always say there's 2 different universities, University of Life, and then there's obviously the professional side of things, the traditional universities. So if you think about it, everybody from those 2 different points of views come to a CIC and they are in a great position to be able to design projects, to be able to transfer their skills from life or work experience over to their role as a project manager or lead worker on their CIC projects. So some great examples of this would be, I have worked with lots of people who have got life experience from drug rehabilitation. They might have been people who've been to prison. They might have been people who've suffered domestic abuse. Whatever their standing point and their life experience was, they have learned and created some kind of way to actually then not only just relate to people in that experience, but because they've moved on and they've got out of it, they're able to then pass on some wisdom, some experience. If you think about it, someone who's been to prison, if they go to sort of some young offenders and say, don't do what I did, this is what it was like, that's actually a really powerful message for those young people to hear from somebody who's from their peer group but an older level who's been through it. It's, in a way, that's a lot more impactful than a professional coming in and just sort of saying this is bad because that's what they've learned in textbooks. So that's the example how life experience can help. And then professionally, lots of professionals go over and start CICs. I've got people who are teachers, probation officers, literally everything, every kind of profession, mental health workers, nurses. I've got people who have done lots of youth work, of course, and lots of different skills like that. It's just so transferable. So any kind of profession with those kind of transferable skills works really well. And then if you were just somebody also who've got a passion, maybe you're just a very creative person, and then like from the arts point of view, like myself, I'm just a very creative person. So having a CIC sort of enabled me to actually learn new creative art skills as I did the projects. And I am not somebody who I would say is like an amazing artist, but I've been able to have a very good career now as a community artist. And I've been able to express myself in my sort of creative passions, and I've really enjoyed that. So I've got very creative skills, and those are what have been transferable. So if you've nailed those 3 things, then you should have a really good base to be able to go to grant funders, because what you would convey in your grant funding forms is that you are somebody who has got something unique that is wanted by your community, and you have the skill set to deliver it. So you've got the 3 things that actually make up a really good, strong project, and the funders are going to have good confidence in you then to be able to do that. And then aside from grant funding, because you've nailed those things, you kind of then end up being like the specialist in your field. You're the person that does this unique stuff, and people will come to you and will approach you. So you might get schools that hire you, you might get youth clubs that hire you, you might be able to sell this to the police that they're able to fund you. So there's lots of different people that will actually fund you, as well as the main grant funding bodies. And that will help you be sustainable long term, because a CIC shouldn't just be reliant on grant funding. A CIC should have something that it is selling in the way that a normal business would. So you should be selling something, a service, an activity, or whatever it is. And I find that CICs that don't build that in are the ones that fold and are more unsuccessful. So I hope that was useful. And if you are inspired by that, please jump over to my website and look at my course, How to Set Up a CIC and Get Funded in 4 months, and jump in the chat and just run your idea past me, and I'll let you know.